Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 390 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our third book is called From Letters to Leaders, Leveraging Your Fraternity or Sorority Experience to Land Your Dream Job. So go and pick up that book today on Amazon. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Our next guest actually went to school at West Virginia University, which I absolutely adore the institution because they were one of the first universities to go out and pick up copies of our first book. This is called From Letters to Leaders, Creating Impact on Your College Campus and Beyond. They picked those books up in bulk and then they started teaching it, using it as a textbook at that particular university for undergraduate students and also for grad students that are going to be going into student affairs. So I can't say enough good things about that institution. Now, our next guest, he believes that success can actually be taught, and he's from West Virginia University. Louis Pelliccioni Jr. uses his 55 years of experience from his career, sports coaching, and finance to teach the skills, attitudes, attributes, all backed by research in order to become successful. Welcome to the show, Lou.
Thank you, Mike, very much.
It's an honor to have you on the show. You have just an incredible career, but of course, it all started with your master's degree back in speech and communications from West Virginia University. I'm wondering, why did you choose West Virginia?
Hometown, very simple. I wish I could give you all these, but I had a wonderful education back in the time because the new dean of speech communication had come in and he had done all kinds of things in that area of anxiety and all that, and I got to go through all that. It was very, very, very fortunate.
Very nice. All right. Well, you got the hometown deal. I like it. I think that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a wonderful thing that you can stay close to home. That's really nice. And, you were at Wells Fargo Advisors for over 35 years. You were managing $200 million in client assets over at Wells Fargo. So you obviously had tremendous amount of success for a very long period of time. Not a lot of people stay at one institution for 35 years. So what do you believe are the two most important traits for success in anything?
Great question, Mike. First of all, let me lead with this, that I'm a big believer because of my experience, research, everything. There's not one or two ideas when it comes to success. There's a lot of ways to do it. And there's a lot of different attitudes, skills, and attributes that it takes to be successful. But there was a book done, you may have heard of it. It was done back in 2004 by a lady by the name of Angela Duckworth, and she wrote a book called Grit. And grit was supposedly the number one reason, more important than intelligence, more important than IQ. It was the most important factor, not the only factor. And of course, what grit is, it's a combination of two things. It's a combination of passion and perseverance. And I can tell you, I've not worked a day in my life. I'll be 75. I'm still working 10 to 12 hours a day. I love it because I've always worked at something that I've loved. First, sports, that was my passion. And I got to do that for almost 20 years. And then the stock market was my hobby. Warren Buffett was my idol when I was 18. That's many years ago. And so when I got out of coaching, I went into to become a financial advisor, and I've loved it ever since. I still go home and watch Finance Check. My kids think I'm nuts, but that's okay.
Well, listen, there's no better idol than Warren Buffett. I mean, if you want to be successful, just watch what he does and follow him, and you're going to be very successful in life.
Yeah, he's done it the right way. There's no question about it. But like I said, passion, perseverance. I tell every young person I know, Mike, follow your passion.
Yeah.
Follow your passion. Follow
Yeah.
what you love to do. Find a way to make money. If you can't make a lot of money in it, find a way.
Well, that's the
And
key right there is you got to be good at what you're doing because, you've probably seen that show American Idol at some point.
oh
There are
yes,
these people out there that, they're very passionate about singing, but then when they open their mouth, like the most horrific, sounds come out of their mouth. So just because you're passionate about something doesn't mean that you're good at it. So what
well,
I want to tell the students is that yeah, passion is good, but it's also got to be something that you're really good at. So try to find
very,
whatever that
very
is.
good statement.
Yeah, I mean, try to
Because
find whatever you actually naturally do, whatever you're gifted at. What I want you to do is take that and run with it and do the 10,000 hours like Malcolm Gladwell suggests.
that's right.
Practice it for 10,000 hours, just like Tiger Woods did with his golf swing, just like Michael Jordan did with his shot on the court. I mean, I want you to practice those things for 10,000 hours so that way you really become at the top of whatever, it is that you're trying to do, and then you're going to be successful at whatever it is that
There are just so many different things, Mike, that it takes to be successful.
yeah.
Passion is one of them.
Yep.
Perseverance. But just like you're saying, just because you're passionate, if you have no skill for it,
Right.
you're not going to be very successful.
That's
And
right.
it works that way. A quick story: I had a manager when I was coaching high school. He was about 5'2", and he always wanted to make the team. He had no abilities, athletic ability, great kid, smart, all that, but he loved writing too. And finally, I said, not everybody can play basketball. Even if you might have a passion for it, that's why they have leagues that you can play whenever you want to.
Right.
And he's now a big time writer in New York City. And I remember our conversation in high school about exactly what you're talking about. You have to have some talent for it.
You got to have some talent for it. I mean, I love basketball too, but you know what? The truth is, I'm 5'6.5".
There
I'm
we
never
go.
going to become an NBA player. Okay.
No.
It's just not in the cards. So I got to find something else to do. Even though I love the game, I'm never going to be any good at it. I don't have enough skill. I mean, even in the 7th and 8th grade, there were people that were towering above me, over 6 foot, full grown beards, muscle development. And I'm like, I got nothing on these guys.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, Mike, the one thing I want to make sure that the young people also understand is that I kind of thought when I was younger that you had to be really great at something, to do it. And I listened to a speech one time by the Wheaties guy, actually, back when I was a teenager. And he made the statement that average people do amazing things every day. And I don't think you have to be the most gifted, because if you stay at it, you'll get better.
That's
and
right.
If you continue to push it, if it's something you really love. Now, again, if you're 5'2", do I think you're going to be a basketball player? No. But you could be 6'8" and be very average, because I had a high school player that was the worst player on the team when he was a sophomore, by far. I only kept him because he grew 8 inches between his freshman year, and he went from 5'11" to 6'7", and he was the worst. By the time he was a senior, he got a college scholarship.
That's nice. Yeah. Hey, listen, put in those 10,000 hours, and
Yes.
That's
It's
certainly a
also about
possibility.
hard work.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
a lot of skills, a lot of attributes, and so forth.
Yeah. Now I'm wondering, because I'm a parent of 2 kids, and my son is starting college this fall. My daughter is going to be starting college next fall, so in a year. Is there something that I, as a parent, should be teaching them so that way they're successful when they start out in college?
That's a really, really good statement. In fact, one of my talks that I do is on, as parents, what you should look at. Now, your kids are a little older, but they're ready to go to college. It's not like they're 6 or 7 or 8 years old. And there are things you can do and it's all based on research that we know. But I can tell you one thing. I was just looking through. I think I don't know how many research things I have in my book. I've got a ton of research that backs up what I'm talking about, because I thought that would be an interesting way. And one of them talks about goals and planning. And it said, it's sad that we don't teach that. We don't teach people to have goals and set goals and write down their goals. They did a study and they looked at the kids 10 years later. There were 3% of the college graduates in this study that had written goals. 10 years later, they made 10 times what the other kids made because they were planners, they had goals, they had written goals. It's not important just to say, oh, I want to do this. No, you got to put something in and it's got to be important to you. Yeah. So that would be the first thing I would tell your kids. Okay, you're going to school. What are your goals? What are you wanting to do? Let's write them down. And that would be one thing. The other thing is I was a terrible reader when I was in high school and just terrible. And I again heard a talk and the guy said, all successful people read. If you don't read, you will not be successful. And I started reading. Of course, I was reading then about sports and I was reading about becoming a basketball coach. And I think I've got 250 basketball books and strategies and stuff like that. And we know that everyone that is ultra successful, one of their number one things they'll tell you is they'll say, I'm an avid reader. And so whatever your kids are interested in, they should be reading about. And, you know, I mean, I'm not saying they have to know what they want to do in life, but there's got to be things they're interested in. They should be reading and extra reading every day. It's the number one thing that really successful people talk about. They're all big readers. I don't care. I think Warren Buffett spends 70% of his day reading.
That's incredible.
70% of his day reading.
Right.
And do I think that's one of the reasons? Does he think it's one of the reasons he's been successful? He'll tell you that. So get your kids used to reading, writing down their goals, even simply. It doesn't have to be complicated, you know. But those would be two things that I would tell them to start learning how to plan and journal and start putting down things they want to do in life. They're old enough. They're at a different level. I mean, there would be some things that wouldn't be as important, but I'm going to tell you planning, and I have a chapter in that in my book because I've been doing it for 50 years. I was very fortunate. I can't tell you why. I think it was because I listened to so many successful people and I tried to emulate. And when everybody tells you to read, that's successful. And everybody tells you got a plan that's successful, you know, I don't think it takes a lot of intelligence to say, you know what, I think there's something here.
Yeah. Yeah, no question about it. And I like, you know, writing it down and planning it pen to paper, not like on your phone or anything like that.
No,
There's something about
please.
writing it, you know, with your hands and putting it to paper that somehow just your brain retains that and you're able to recall that and then hold yourself accountable to doing what you said you were going to do, what you wrote down with your own hands.
That's right. Yeah.
I like that a lot. You also believe that there are enemies to success. What are some of those enemies and how do we deal with them?
Well, the three biggest enemies that I've seen and from listening and being involved in so many things, it's fear, risk, and failure, and how you handle all three of those. And we've all had them. We all deal with them. How you deal with them will dictate your success. There's no question about it. I mean, the first one of fear. I can't tell you why I did this, Mike. I cannot tell you. When I graduated from high school, I was a typical kid that was a little nervous. I was afraid to give a speech in public, but still is the number one fear in America. And at the time when I went to school, you had a major and a minor, okay? And I picked speech as my minor. And it was the best thing that I've ever done. Between getting my BS and my MA degree in speech and communication and nonverbal communication, it's really helped me in life. And I faced that fear. And, you know, you've got to understand the fears. And then it goes down to how much risk do you take? And I've been a risk taker. I go after it. I don't know why. I'm not afraid to fail. I think it has a lot to do with my sports background.
Yeah.
You know, I played, believe it or not, I went to a small high school. So I played football, basketball, baseball, golf, and tennis. So there you go. I mean, I did everything. And, but, you know, I failed. And I learned why, and I learned how to adapt and dealing with failure. And I never worried about it. I just used it as an evaluative tool. But it's amazing how many people will not go forward. They're afraid of failure. They're just afraid in general. And they won't step out. They won't take a chance. I got to tell you, on this area, I heard a story. It's a real good story about a guy that talking about his family. And the kids, they were very successful. And they said, one of the things that my father did every day when we would be home for dinner, he'd say, okay, what did you try and fail at today? He didn't talk to them about success. He wanted to know what they tried and failed at today. And he would congratulate them. I'm happy because you tried, And I think that is for you want another thing to do, ask your kids what they failed at.
Yeah.
They might be shocked because it's the opposite of what we usually tell them. But I think it's a great attitude. You're going to fail. So let's get out there and fail and see what we're good at, see what we have to work on.
Yeah.
And I used to use that in practice sessions. I would do everything I could. I used to break practice down into 3 different areas. One thing would be on things we knew, working on timing. Another would be on something different that maybe was preparedness. But 1/3 of practice was spent on things we weren't very good at. Mm-hmm. And, because I didn't care how we looked in practice. I wanted to be good in games. And if there are things we weren't good at, and I think you should run your life that, work on your weaknesses. And successful people, if you listen to them, that's what they talk about. That's what they work on. They try to get better all the time. So, those are, you look at the fear, risk, and failure. And of course, that brings up the last thing with all of it is, and a lot of it's caused by comfort zone. A lot of people are afraid to get out of their comfort zone, right? And you got to push them. You got to push them. And your kids are right at that level. And I'd be pushing them. I pushed my kids. And they both turned out great. They're both hard workers. And, I'm just very, very pleased. And I learned a lot of this from a lot of good people along the way.
That's great advice. And like the old saying goes, I never lose. I either win or I learn. Those are the only 2 options. That's it, right? And I think if you have that attitude, understand that, yeah, you're going to fail. Sure, Lou and I have failed thousands of times, but we learn something from it, and we're better because of that experience. And we're not going to let that happen again, right? We're not going to repeat those mistakes. So I think that's an important lesson. It's okay to make mistakes, just don't make them more than once. And
Mike,
just
you can sit on this side. You can be over here.
You and I have been through the same wars.
With one thing, what you're saying. I love the what is it? Oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank on the forget, move on.
All right, no problem. We'll move on. It'll come back to you. It's all right. Now, our college student listeners who are listening to you right now, I'll tell you what, they are stressed out. And I need to know, what are some mental and maybe some physical techniques that we can use so that way they can better handle whatever stress is out there?
I was very, very fortunate at 20, 21 years old to be going through speech and to learning. And as I told you, the dean of the department was real big in anxiety and how to handle stress and all this. Mm-hmm. In fact, 42 years ago, we wrote a book called Don't Choke. And it dealt with handling pressure, handling stress. So one of the greatest skills I've ever learned, is how to relax. I could go sleep on this floor, this cement floor right here. I learned the physical skill of relaxation, which is nothing more. It's so simplistic, and I don't believe that we do not teach kids this. Is you go through muscle groups and you tense and you relax the muscle group. So you learn the difference between tension and relaxation. You do that enough, you'll be able to tell where the tension comes in your body when you're nervous. And believe it or not, right before this podcast, I was a little hyped. But I know you're supposed to be. Yeah. Because you want to perform. I'm going to perform. I want to do well. I want to help young people. And but that's one of the most important. And there's a lot of places you can go to learn the physical skill of relaxation. And then it's also how you talk to yourself, and mentally what you do. And we did a lot of studies. I mean, back then we knew positive thinking worked. Well, we're talking 40 some years ago, but we didn't know why. Now we know why. We know why it's important to put positive energy. We know why your self-talk is so important because it dictates, it goes into your subconscious. And a great little story on that. 1986, the Mets were playing the Boston Red Sox in baseball. You might remember the story of the first baseman.
Yep.
But guess what? He was on a talk show before the game, before the World Series started. And after the talk show, they were talking and basically said, "Is there anything to worry about?" He said, "Yeah, I'm really worried that I'll blow a ball and blow the World Series." Well, you know, that many years ago, we didn't know why it happened, but now we know why. It goes when you talk to yourself like that, you put those kind of images in your mind, it goes into your subconscious and it sits there. And if that situation occurs, you become nervous. Where that's why it's so important how we talk and what we see. And, you know, even more, I knew it 40 some years ago in practice that now I know why it's important. In fact, for young people, the for college kids, the 6 most important minutes of the day. 3 minutes you get up in the morning. Dr. Aman, who's a brain guy, talks about it. What you put in your mind the first 3 minutes when you wake up and the first 3 minutes before you go to bed are the 6 most important minutes. And he talks about it all because of the subconscious and all that. And that's so simple to do. Just be positive. See yourself having a great day.
That's great advice. And hopefully the students will listen to what you're talking about, because I know first thing in the morning and then right when they go to bed, they're usually attached to their phone and they're usually on social media. So hopefully they can get rid of that and start thinking, you know, a more positive mindset, you know, when they wake up and before they go to bed. You know, you keep talking about your public speaking skills and the communication minor in school. You're obviously a big believer in public speaking skills. Why do you feel like this skill is so important for young people?
Well, I would tell every single college kid out there to take public speaking communication courses in their minors. Every one of them. You know, you need to have, maybe if you're going into chemistry or whatever. I mean, I could give you a ton of studies, but you know, somebody maybe in engineering might say, well, it doesn't really matter. Yes, it does. It matters in every career in life, how you get along. 80% of your adult success comes from a combination of public speaking, communication, EI, EQ, kindness, compassion. Those kind of things dictate your success more than your expertise. Because if you can't get along with people, you're not going to be as successful as you would be. And why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you spend that? So all these college kids, take a public speaking course. I don't care if you're a little afraid. It's kind of normal. So get through it, face through it, and then you get into communication skills, nonverbal, you know, everything. It's amazing how important that whole area is. In fact, now in corporate America, which these young people that are college kids are going to be going into, that's what they're talking about. How important all those skills are. Right? It's very easy. You've got courses you can be taking on those.
Yep.
You know.
Yep, absolutely. You mentioned EI. Why do you obviously think that emotional intelligence is important as well. What is emotional intelligence? How do we improve emotional intelligence?
Well, emotional intelligence is along the same line with, you know, when you look at that whole area deals with compassion, empathy, you know, and being empathetic with people, being compassionate, being kind. You know, all the big CEOs and all that are now, that's what they're doing. They're trying to get better at that area because they know how important it is now to having successful teams. You know, you just can't be an ass and be successful today. You've got to be kind. You've got to be compassionate to people. I used a story when it was my first year at West Virginia, and I was an assistant, and I've been there for about a week. And I got this letter inviting me to come to Rio de Janeiro for a month and teach at the University of Victoria and teach club coaching, basketball.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there a week, okay? And so I finally went in to see Coach Catlett, who was the head coach at the time. And I showed him the letter and I said, you know, Coach, this was July and we were getting ready to start in August and September, all of our meetings, and I was supposed to go in September. And I said, I don't know how I can miss all that. You know, I mean, I know this guy, I haven't done anything for you yet. And here I'm asking you for 30 or 40 days off. He said, Lou, you can't pass that opportunity like that. He said, you know, you'll be back by the first practice. We'll get it planned, all that. So, man, I was smiling on the way out the door. As I'm going out the door, he says, hey, Coach. I said, yeah. He said, I've done without you for 38 years. I think I can handle the next 30, don't you? So you go and have a great time. Well, that's empathy. That's compassion. How hard do you think you work for somebody? That's what it's all about. That's what all the emotional stuff gets into. You know, it's what they do when you're not around. When someone is compassionate, helps you, talks to you, makes you feel good, versus walking down the hall and never saying a word to you. That's what big time corporate America has learned, is to have those kind of skills. And where do you learn it? You learn it by taking communications courses and understanding. They teach all that in communications courses. And you've got, let's see, Dale Carnegie courses that teach that. There's another one that I found. It's called the Communication Guys Academy. Very, very good. They go into all this kind of stuff: verbal, nonverbal, EI, EQ, everything, and they give you ways to work on it, to see where you are, and but there are things out there you can do.
Yeah, those are some
and
great
there's places you can go online, especially today.
Yeah,
Mike, with online stuff, my gosh, it's out there.
Yeah,
you know, and I'm telling you, if you would ask me if any of the success that I've had, it's all been because of my communication, public speaking. In fact, if I had to do it on technical skills, you saw I had to have somebody come in and set up everything.
Oh yeah.
As my son says, Dad, thank God you can talk, because you'd never make it today. But he said you can do that.
That's good. That's good. You know what you're good at.
yeah. And I know what I'm not, and that's another success trait. Knowing what you're good at, knowing what you're not. That comes from coaching, Mike.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of that, I mean, let's assume that you were a college student and you were completely unsure of what you want to do in life. And there's a lot of students out there just like that, right? Yeah. So how do you figure out what you're supposed to be doing?
Well, first of all, if you talk to any college kid, I would say 90% of them have a passion for something. It might be food, maybe they're a great cook. I'm just using that as an example.
Right.
And the thing that I told my kids, both of my boys are now they're not kids, they're in their 30s. And I said, think of all the skills and all the things you need if you want to do that certain thing, and start working on it. And it's not just the intellectual part. That's what we forget about. So that's why I'm saying planning. Learn how to plan, learn how to do box planning. What is that? The Franklin, I forget. I don't know. I think it was Roosevelt that came up with box planning or something like that. I mean, 80 years ago or something like that. It's not like it's new. I've been using it for 50 years. My whole day is planned. From the moment I get up to go at night. Now, that doesn't mean I can't change it. But what it helps you to do, I'm a big time management person. And very important, if you're going to be successful, time, what you don't use wisely, you lose. And I learned that luckily 50 years ago. And like I say, my whole day is planned, even the recreation plan. I get up, I exercise every morning before I go to work, but sometimes I have evening appointments, I don't have the time. But learning planning skills and learning time efficiency skills, that would be one of the most important things if you don't know what you want to do. And then just take your general stuff but remember, you've got to have personal skills. That's where I don't care if you don't know what you want to do. Take public speaking, take communication classes, because you're working on you. You're working on becoming a better you. And I think that's what's extremely, if you don't know, that's fine. I don't care if you don't know till the end. And then you just get a job, and then you maybe find out when you get at your job. But if you're terrible with people, you're going to have a hard time going anywhere.
Yep. Absolutely.
I hope I haven't overdone it, but I'm going to tell you, it's the most important thing. I could sit here all day long telling you stories of where I've work with people that didn't succeed, just all kind of stories like that, where people didn't have the skills. They weren't good enough. They were smart. I'm going to give you a story of myself. I was very fortunate when I got into finance. My first year, I almost didn't get hired. In fact, I was told that the financial institution basically told my boss not to hire me. I found out 25 years later, by the way. But that year, I was rookie broker of the year in the whole country. Yeah. And there was a guy in my class that supposedly got the first 100 on the Series 7. So he was extremely intelligent, but he didn't have the personal skill. I had the personal skill. And I had enough intelligence that I could put them both together. And that's why I'm saying, I don't care if you know it. Work on your personal skills. Work on getting along with people. That's what's important. And then add whatever you want to add to it. You want to be a coach, you want to be a teacher, all those things are important. So you can't say, I don't know what I want to do, so I'm not going to do this. No, work on yourself. Make yourself better. Make yourself the best version of you. That's what I've tried to do in my book that I'm finishing up. And I've got 3 parts to it. I've got first the core traits that I think I found everybody has to have. Those are things like mindset, passion, perseverance. Then I go into, I think, what I've seen, what it takes to go from good to great. And there's a difference. And then the last part deals with my book that I wrote 40-some years ago about handling success. And I'm sure you and I could talk a lot about showing disasters where people have been successful, and because of drugs, alcohol, everything else, they ruined their success. They ruined families. They did all because they couldn't handle stress.
Yep. 100%. Well, this is great advice. You've obviously been very successful in life, and I'm so glad that you're sharing all of these stories and experiences with some of the young people out there, so that way they don't repeat any kind of mistakes out there. And there's a million of war stories that we can tell you about, whether it be athletes, who basically are broke and bankrupt right now. I mean, you name it. I mean, just poor planning. And not really getting the education that they need in order to be successful in managing money and things like that, which are incredibly important. But you've given us a lot to think about. I really, really like this a lot. This has been great. And, we do love good food here at the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Interestingly enough, I was just in Tampa a week ago, had the time of my life over there. But if I end up in the Fort Myers area next, what is one restaurant that I need to go and check out for a great meal?
Well, first of all, if you ever do it, I'm down there for 6 months in the winter. Call me, and I'd love to take you. And I would take you to Mama Anna's at Coconut Point. All right. And it's an original Italian. I mean, let me tell you. And it's outstanding. It's
nice.
Outstanding.
I could use a good Italian restaurant. I live in Nashville, Tennessee these days, and nobody knows how to make good Italian food over here. I'm originally from New York, so I know what good Italian food is. I go to Little Italy when I want real good food.
Yeah.
But not here in Nashville. I can't find it.
Oh, my.
Oh, man. Well, this has been a lot of fun. All right. So if our listeners, if they're interested in your upcoming book, it's called Becoming Your Best. Where should they go in order to connect with you and then buy the book this fall?
Well, I'm in the process of getting my website up, which will probably be up in a few months. All right. And of course, the book's about 5-6 months out. I mean, we're moving right along. We're 70% through the editorial part of it. And and all the different things. So I'm hoping by the end of the year. So maybe about that time, I'll let you know. You can maybe put something out or have me back again. Maybe I can tell some more stories.
There you go. Well, all you have to do is look him up and you'll find him. His name is Lewis. The last name is spelled Pelliccioni. The name of the upcoming book is called Become Your Best. And I'm sure once that comes out this fall, it is going to be a big hit. Just look that up on Amazon, and I'm sure you'll be able to find it and pick that up. But this has been a lot of fun, Lou. I really appreciate your time today.
No, it has been. It has been. Just tell them to work on themselves. That's the most important things college kids can do. Be a better speaker. Be a better communicator. And then whatever job they go out with or decide to go with, they'll do really well.
That's good advice. Hear it straight from Lou. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for the time. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this talk with Lou, I want you to like it on social media, share it with other college students, and we'll see you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.